Hey there, my friends. This is Jeremy Siskind here. I'm the author of the Jazz Piano Fundamentals series. And today's video is going to be a little bit different. One of the elements that we talk about in all three books of the Jazz Piano Fundamentals series is the blues. Because this is just one of the key formative elements of jazz. In book one, we're talking about blues basics, getting into the blues form, blues improvisation. In book two, we go further. We look at some more bebop kind of blues changes and ways to elaborate on the blues. And then in book three, we talk about modal blues, a la Chick Corea, Herbie Hancock, other geniuses, McCoy Tyner, other geniuses like that. And today's video, I said it's going to be different. Some of you might know that I teach a community college class through Fullerton College. And this is a video that I actually made for them because I'm going to be gone like an irresponsible professor. And so I made a almost hour-long video for them on their first lecture about blues improvisation. It covers a lot of the same territory, maybe that's covered in the blues section of Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 1, but I think I go into more detail and give some more specific exercises. Since this was almost an hour, I divided it into two parts. So you're about to see part one, which is talking about the blues scale, the elements of the blues scale, the relationship to the pentatonic, how we want to use the blues scale. I think you'll find something in there that's interesting if you're at a beginning or intermediate level of improvising. So, please enjoy. Enjoy. The blues is a great place to start on improvisation because there is a scale known as the blues scale. We'll talk about, there's a discussion about whether there's one scale or two scales, and you can use that same scale over the entire blues form. So a lot of times in jazz, we associate one chord with one scale, and particularly if we're changing key centers, then we're really gonna have to change scales as we go, but not so in the blues. Well, there's a lot of nuance to discuss here, but this is your very first lesson, so we're not going to go too deep into nuance. So here's what we would call the F blues scale. And compared to the major scale, we would call these chord tones the root, the flat 3, the 4, the sharp 4, or flat 5. Oof. That's what I get for trying to write while I talk. Sharp 4 or flat 5, the 5, and then the flat 7. It sounds like this. So here's F, and here's the F dominant chord. People often talk about this scale as containing what could be called blue notes. And these are notes that are intentionally tense. It's a mouthful. Intentionally tense. And the ones that most frequently get referred to as blue notes, definitely this minor third, right? If I'm playing an F7 chord and then that A flat, that's creating tension against the A natural that would be in there. I don't know why this E flat is sticky. That's interesting. And then the B natural definitely is also thought of as a blue note because imagine that you have this F dominant 7th chord. That would be rubbing up a half step against the 5th of the chord, C. And then maybe in a slightly more questionable category is this flat 7th. We might be able to call that a blue note because, that note is very tense against the root and the 3rd of an F7. But it's also part of the chord of the F7. So, I could see that. I could see arguments both ways regarding whether or not that's, should be considered a blue note. Okay. So those blue notes, just to define that term again, these are notes that intentionally rub up against the notes of a chord. And this is something kind of unique to the blues scale. I mean, other scales have notes that don't fit in so well, but the blues scale really emphasizes those notes. A few other things to notice about this blues scale. So first of all, it's only a 6-note scale. And it's a lumpy scale. That's a technical term, lumpy. Right? The intervals are kind of all over the place, right? We leap from F to A flat at the beginning, and then have a bunch of little seconds and chromatic notes in the middle, and then we leap from C to E flat at the end. Like, it's a really weird scale. And I do want to point out that the most common mistakes improvisers make when they're trying to improvise with this blues scale is filling in these big gaps. I hear a lot of students using, for instance, a G in between the F and the A, or for some reason it's usually a D flat between the F and the E flat, and those are not members of the blues scale. You should omit them. If you're trying to play the blues scale, there's a lot of other things that you can do. Notice also that this has a minor third, which is pretty weird if we're thinking about, this going with an F dominant 7th chord as the home chord in an F blues, right? That chord has a major third, but this scale has a minor third, so that's part of the inherent bluesy tension. So let me reinforce something that I said earlier, which is that this scale goes with the form of the blues, not any chord. And that means that, oops, just headbutted my camera. That means that it's not your idea that you're going to switch from the F blues scale when the chord is an F7 to the B flat blues scale when the chord is a B flat 7. You want to stick with this same blues scale throughout all of the chords of a blues chord progression. So let me demonstrate, and I'll let you see what I'm playing. I'm just going up and down the blues scale. Not changing scales when I change chords. I'm gonna do the 2-5-1. Okay, so you don't want to switch blues scales. You want to stick with this scale for the entire form. Now, I told you we wouldn't be getting into too much nuance, but here we go with a little bit of nuance. Just because, and this goes for any scale, just because I told you can use this scale the whole way through, it doesn't mean that you can stop listening. Because there's definitely a lot of ways to play this scale, to use notes from this scale, and make it sound really horrible against these chords. What you want to do is you want to make sure that whatever you do, whatever tension you create, tension's part of the blues scale, like we talked about using these blue notes. Whatever tension you create, you resolve it. You resolve to some kind of a home base that's going to sound good with everything. So check this out. I'm going to use correct notes of the blues scale, but I'm going to make this sound really bad. I'm going to play... So I'm choosing a lot of these notes in the cracks, and I'm not resolving them anywhere. I'm not using them with any intentionality at all. So that's, not going to be good. You want to make sure that you are listening and resolving within the blues scale. And if you're unsure how to do that, the best thing to do is bring it back to F if you're in the F blues scale. I can play a lot of gnarly things, and if I resolve it to F at the end of the phrase, I generally find that it works pretty well. So check it out. Every phrase here is going to end with the note F. That's not saying that every single phrase in anybody's blues solo is going to end with F, but this is a good place to get started. You know, it's like the if you're playing tag, there's like the safe thing that you can touch. That root, that home note of the scale is kind of like that safe zone in tag. It's going to really work nicely over that whole form. Okay, what else do I need to say? So just to be clear, this formula of root, flat 3, 4, sharp 4, flat 5, same note, 5th, and flat 7 works in different keys. So let's just go ahead and let's find the blues scale in a couple different keys to make sure we've got it. Let's find the blues scale in C and E flat. You can do this by yourself. You could do this with me. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write the formula. Root, flat 3, 4, sharp 4, flat 5, 5, flat 7. Root, flat 3, 4. So remember, this is always compared to the major scale. So in C, quite easy because our major scale is all of our white keys. I'm going to write this in the upper octave just because I ran out of space, but you can play it in whatever octave you want. Scale doesn't change. So flat 3 is going to be E flat, 4 is F, sharp 4 or flat 5 is going to be F sharp or G flat, 5th is G, and flat 7 is B flat. The E flat blues scale is actually quite a special blues scale. The root is E flat, the 3rd is going to be G flat, the 4th of the major scale, so be careful, is A flat, the sharp 4 or flat 5 is A, the 5th is B flat, and then the flat 7th is D flat. And I say this is a special scale because it uses all of the black keys plus the note A. So the E flat blues scale can be kind of a nice one for first blues experiences because you can't go wrong if you're playing a black key. Okay, let's talk a bit of scale nerdery. And so this is, maybe a little bit further than you need to totally understand for your first lesson, but I find that my students tend to be interested in really understanding some of these things on a deep level and have these questions. So we're going to get into scale nerdery for 5 minutes or so. So the blues scale, and let's get back to this key of F, is highly related to the minor pentatonic scale. As you could probably guess from the title, the minor pentatonic scale has 5 notes. And pentatonic scales are fascinating. Can I multitask? Because they always consist of notes that can be stacked in fifths. And fifths, if you've studied the overtone series, if you study the physics of music, we know that outside of an octave, fifths are our purest notes, our purest intervals, excuse me. So here, we're getting this pentatonic scale if we start on A flat and stack fifths. A flat, E flat, B flat, F, and C. This gives us our pentatonic scale. And it's a scale with no tritones in it, as well as no minor seconds. Which means that it's a very pure sounding, very open sounding sort of a scale, which is great for a lot of folk music. As I play it, you might hear that this kind of sounds like a lot of Asian folk music. That uses the minor pentatonic scale a lot. So compare now that minor pentatonic scale to the blues scale. It's almost identical. There's actually just one note being added when we create the blues scale. It's that note between the fourth and the fifth. So the blues and the minor pentatonic are really, really closely related. And this leads to, and we're getting really into nerdery, the A flat, if we did the A flat regular pentatonic or major pentatonic, I'm choosing A flat because it's the relative minor of F. It has the same notes as F minor pentatonic. So it'd be A flat, B flat, C, E flat, F. Same 5 notes. Here it is as the minor pentatonic. Here it is as the major pentatonic. Beautiful kind of harp sort of a thing. Sorry for the ambulance going by. It's not for me. It's the good news. And the formula to get a pentatonic scale is root 2, 3, 5, 6. Some people, and it is, I think, quite useful, take this major pentatonic and they add the same pitch that's being added in the blues scale. So it's getting a little bit weird because we're in 2 different keys now, but we're here for a reason. I'm going to let you see this bigger. So we have the same notes between the minor pentatonic in F, that major pentatonic in A flat, but if we add this B natural, we get a scale that people sometimes refer to as the major blues scale. There's also other names that go around, and this is a scale that's used not just in jazz, but I think in a lot of pop, R&B, country. You're going to hear... So this has that formula of the pentatonic scale, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, plus this note that we could think of as the flat 3 or sharp 2. That's right between the second and third scale degree. So because some people refer to this as the major blues scale, you'll find people who refer to this top scale that I just call the blues scale as the minor blues scale. And that makes sense in a way because it's related to the minor pentatonic. For the sake of argument, let's find this major blues scale in F. I'm always putting air quotes around the major blues scale, in part because one of the beautiful things about the blues is that it's not major or minor. It's like this cool combination of major and minor. And so I don't like thinking of some people misinterpret this as saying this goes with like an F major blues, whereas it's an F blues scale grown from the pentatonic. So how did I figure this out? It's the 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, that pentatonic formula, and then that note in between, the sharp 2 or flat 3. Okay. Now, we've spent a bunch of time on this, but if you're a beginning blues improviser, then I want you to ignore this second scale. Okay? It might be interesting. It sounds good in a lot of cool contexts. I'm not going to lie to you. It's a cool scale. But I would really focus in on this traditional blues scale as you start to improvise. Otherwise, it can be overwhelming. You might be wondering, well, can I combine those 2 scales? And the answer is yes and no. So you definitely hear artists using these 2 scales within close proximity to each other. So watch, I'm going to go up the major blues scale and down the minor blues scale. I could do the opposite. I could go up the minor blues scale and then down the major blues scale. What I would probably avoid is combining a scale and just getting mishmash, saying, well, I can play the root, I can play the second from the major blues scale, I could play the sixth from the major blues scale. You're going to get nothing meaningful. So I would keep them really separate. If you do use both of them, I should say, which I'm discouraging. If you do use both of them, make sure to keep them separate in your mind, because otherwise you just get kind of a meaningless set of 10 or 11 pitches. I forget how many it ends up being if you combine them. Okay, so now we have a little bit more of an understanding of where the blues scale comes from. If you hear it out there being referred to as the minor blues scale, that would be the reason why. It's related to the F minor pentatonic scale. Thank you for watching. If this was a good level for you, I bet you'd like Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 1. Okay, if you liked this, part 2 is actually way cooler. Every time I post a 2-part YouTube video, part 1 does great, nobody watches part 2. But I'm promising you guys, you don't want to sleep on part 2, so watch for it coming up. Okay. If you watch this far, why don't you say something about the TV show Blues Clues? Because, of course, that's one of the best expressions of the blues. All right, bye, guys.